Welcome back on this Thursday evening for another episode of NFL TV. It's a split round in Division 1, so might be a bit shorter first time around, but Liam, last weekend it was round 13 in the top flight, and we saw some pretty astonishing results. Two games in particular decided by less than a kick. The winning goal kicked in the last minute of the game. Of course, we were at Greensboro for Greensboro versus Bundoora for the NFL match of the day. That was a ripper. It was close all day, and then of course we got wind of the score out at McLeod between McLeod and Montmorency. But two of the closest games imaginable last weekend.
Yeah, it was a fantastic round, especially obviously the one that we saw the second time in a couple of months that Greensboro and Bundoora put on a real sort of classic encounter, and I think it was 3 points, 4 points the last time, two on the weekend. So very tight teams.
Well, Greensboro's, I guess, lucky in a way that both times have got the Chockies with 2 wins by under a goal against Bundoora, but both the encounters we've seen between those two sides have been really nothing in it. It's just been Greensboro's probably been in front when the siren sounded, but you could argue those two sides are definitely going to go far, and you just think if they play each other in the final, I think we're set for an epic. And despite Bundoora being on top of the ladder and Greensboro probably dropping a few games at certain stages of the year that we thought they might win, you can't separate those two sides at the moment, and you're probably just hoping that eventually come finals time they actually get to meet each other.
Yeah, and even we were saying on Saturday, just the sort of the crowd and the feeling around the place had a bit of a finals atmosphere about it already. So you think when it is actually a final, it'll just go to another level again.
Well, both sides on the weekend had relatively full strength lists. I guess we know Greensboro's got a few players to come back in. Of course, Jenkins down to Bullants, who we're led to believe will be back in the lineup pretty shortly as well, and a few others still lingering around. So Aaron Burns running around in the reserve, so he'll be up in the seniors in a couple of weeks' time when he gets back to full fitness, and we know Bundoora as well. Still a few players still just a little bit away, so they're going to get even stronger still. So they're both just strengthening their claim for a premiership tilt. But two sides who we definitely look forward to seeing. We'll have a close look at the Bundoora's game this weekend against West Preston a little later. But the other one we'll speak about was the McLeod versus Montmorency game, because that was just a riveting game of football. Both sides needing to win to stay in the finals hunt, and of course Montmorency came away with a 1 point win, kicked the first 9 goals of the game, and led by 8 goals at half time. You would have thought game over. It was at the Winton. I actually tipped McLeod, and I thought on their home ground they'd be playing such good footy, but not the start thereafter. Dean Lindback was on fire and kicked 10 goals up until the halfway mark of the third term, and from there things just seemed to change. Liam.
Yeah, it was a bit upsetting for McLeod. They'd have in the last quarter. They saw they had 10 scoring shots to 1, and they pushed back. I think they were about 6 goals down 3/4 time, and almost got back and stole, but probably a little bit of inaccuracy in front of goal in that last quarter. Not being too critical, obviously it's fantastic to come back from as far as they were, but yeah, they probably could have thought they could have snatched it. When you look at the stats, they just must have dominated that final quarter and might find themselves a little bit unlucky not to have snatched it at the end.
Well, they were 6 goals down or just short of 6 goals down at 3/4 time. Kicked the opening 6 goals of the quarter, hit the front. They had Daniel Francis on debut for the McLeod seniors, kicked 7 goals for the day. He kicked his 7th to put them in front, and had 2 chances after that when they were leading to probably put the game to bed, and Monty was able from a kick out to go the length of the ground, and a fortunate bounce we're hearing went the way of Lindback, and he kicked his 11th and the deciding goal of the game. But for Montmorency, it keeps their season alive. As I said, they've won 4 on a trot now. They're actually still only percentage outside the top 5 with Northcote Park winning on the weekend, but they're really coming good at the business end of the year. And you think McLeod from here, they've got a pretty tough run ahead of them, but you think they'd have to win their remaining 5 games if they had to play, to probably just pinch 5th spot on the table this year.
Yeah, and I think as well, besides the tough run, the fact that they lost to Monty, who are probably going to be one of those sides that they'll either have to knock out Monty or Northcote Park, you'd think. So yeah, it'll be very tough for McLeod. They could still do it. Obviously, they could, if they ran the table, they'd probably finish up in 5th, but they've got a bit of an uphill battle now, you'd think.
And one side that's inside the top 5 at the moment, still sitting in 5th spot, is Northcote Park. Had a win over Whittlesea on the weekend. Whittlesea been blown out by 100 points in their previous 2 encounters, so this time around they got within just over 40 points was the final margin, so a lot closer, a lot more competitive than they've been in recent weeks. Half time, just 7 points separating the two sides. Northcote Park in the end, just the stronger outfit, but still no fair chance for Whittlesea. They've still got a depleted team. I think they're getting a few players back in there, but it was always going to be tough. Rocky Collins wasn't there as well, so probably you'd argue that 3 of their best 4 probably moved on the park. Northcote Park just doing what you have to do, I guess, getting the win, most importantly, and just keeping Montmorency away for the time being. But going into this week's split round, North Park will be happy just to probably be inside the top 5 and set themselves for a big run home when they come back from the break.
Yeah, it looks on paper like it was a big improvement from Whittlesea the last couple of weeks. Obviously, they are massively undermanned when you're missing sort of your best forward, your best on baller, plus a host of other players who are going to struggle. But and Northcote probably, just looking at it, probably could have won by a bit more when you think it's 17-15 to 12-4. So maybe again a bit of kicking from the Cougars might have pushed it out a little bit, but takes nothing away from them. Obviously, as I said, they just had to get the win to stay in the top 5, and they did that. So it's all in their hands now in the rest of the season.
Well, they didn't, of course, beat the Eagles the first time around that. In the game, they were really expected to win, and from there, their season's probably taken a bit of a turn for the worse. They haven't been able to get it back on track. They did lose 4 in a row at one stage, and they're still inside the top 5. Massive games coming up after the break for them, so they'll be keen to keep winning, I guess, and they're going to have to do the same. But once again, it was Bronny Davies, Paul Scanlon, Nick Carter, these players getting their job done through the midfield. Their quality acts, and Sard bounced back. We saw him the week before against Heidelberg, and he was well held. Just the 1 goal that day, kicked 5 on the weekend, and back into the pretty good form. And one of the other sides got the win on the weekend was Heidelberg, who just keeps on rolling now. I think they're equal first on the table, correct me if I'm wrong. I think perhaps maybe a game off. I'm pretty sure it's equal points now with Bandura losing that game, and of course West Preston getting another win. But they're not far off now, and for everything that happened at the start of the year, they're right back in some seriously good form. Their better players come straight back into the side, get right into the best again, like with the Nolans and the likes, getting straight amongst it. It's tough to. It's tough to say because they've been so good for all those years, but you think they're just another great chance of winning a premiership. And on the other sides, I hate to hear it, but Heidelberg is definitely one of the huge contenders now as we approach this split round. But going forward, they're just a massive showing for this year's premiership.
Yeah, and they've got the ability, besides being a really good side, they've got the ability to really sort of just blow teams out of the water in sort of quick bunches, like in the second quarter against Elton. They kicked 7 goals to 1, and then it was pretty much all over from there. It was only, I think, about a goal difference at quarter time, and then they just came out on fire that second quarter and pretty much killed off the game. So they've got the quality there. If they really can turn it on for that 20-minute patch, they can pretty much put any team to the sword in a short amount of time. So that'll be one of the dangers is going into the finals. And as you said, when you can bring back the Nolans and Sinclair and Kennedy, they just sort of slot back in nicely. So it's a nice sign for the Tigers.
It was good to see Josh Yetzi in the best again, the youngster who saw play his first game like before. I guess the other thing for Heidelberg is that, I guess when they first played Alton a couple of weeks back, we had the poll on the NFL website, and we said to the supporters, do you think that Heidelberg would make the finals? And I think it was 66% of people said no. That week they went out and beat Heidelberg. Now they've got them in the return league, and as you said, just blown away in the first half. 9 goals up at half time. They're never going to lose from there. And Alton, it just puts a massive dent in their finals aspirations. But Heidelberg just once again proving they're still one of the powerhouse teams of Division 1. This weekend we've got a couple of big games, just 2 games this weekend, one of the 3 the week after. But the first one on the agenda is it's the top of the table clash. You can't really state how big this encounter is. It's Bandura up against West Preston. Both sides now equal on points again, with Bandura losing on the weekend. Both 10 wins from the first 13 games. In round 1 we called the game, and it was all Bandura really. I think West Preston came at them for a while there in the middle of the game, but Bandura runs away 50-point winners. A lot's changed since then, probably not so much on paper. I guess Rocker comes in for West Preston. They had Goodman that day. I don't think they'll have him this weekend. And while Bandura's probably going to have a very similar team with a lot of the key players they had that day, is still there today in this week's encounter. But at Ulam Reserve, first versus second, it's almost just a toss of the coin game. It's hard to know which way it'll go.
Yeah, it'll be a massive game. Obviously, West Preston will be pretty fired up after the. They'll probably all agree they're pretty below par in that first game for their standards. It was just a bit of an aberration in the first game of the season, especially when you think they had their premiership unveiling and things. So they'll be a bit disappointed with that one. But yeah, and Bandura obviously going to bounce back from a tough loss last week. So they've both got plenty to play for, even though it is pretty much first and second. But it's a massive game for both clubs.
Well, I guess with Heidelberg breathing down the neck, and of course Greensboro beating both these 2 teams in the past fortnight, also still in the chance to come in the top 2. That spot is just it's ripe for the picking, and there's 4 sides who give themselves a genuine chance of finishing top 2. We know the advantage you get of just coming in the top 2, of course, getting an extra chance and just the mental edge it gives you over the other teams as well. So this is a massive game. So it's not only for first spot, but I guess the loser as well is in jeopardy of not coming in the top 2 as well. So a lot at stake, but there's just huge matchups everywhere. We've got Rocker be down forward, West Preston probably take, perhaps Charlton will take him. In the midfield you get the likes of Shaw and Williams taking on each other. Of course Dave Mitchell we saw on the weekend was probably best on ground despite Bandura losing. And then down the other end, of course, Preston Giacomo to take Cameron Cloke. Be interesting to see who they use on Moorcroft, because he's been in some pretty good form as well. But as we saw a couple of weeks ago, they had the match up for Sard as well for 3/4, and probably Sard got away from him in the last. But there's huge matchups everywhere, and it's tight to pick. I think on their home turf, Bundoora, I think, are going to be burning after that loss last week. They probably thought they had the game with probably about 2 minutes to go on the clock. West Preston had a big win against North Heidelberg. They showed they weren't relentless at all, rather, because they brought in Anthony Rock for the clash. They brought in Billy Macheski, and together they kicked 9 goals, and they just showed no mercy for the hapless doggies this year. But I guess it's a really tough one. The other one's another big game of the round, probably not on the same billing as the West Preston Bundoora game, but it's just as important for McLeod as they take on Whittlesea at DeWitton Park. McLeod from here on in just has to win every game. Of course, first time round against Whittlesea was round 1. It was Whittlesea's first game in the top flight, and the Roos led by 6 goals at 3/4 time, and as we know, the Eagles picked them in the end by a point. So there's plenty of feeling left in that one. I think with that result in mind, McLeod's had 3 games decided by a point this year. They've been on the wrong side of the result twice, and of course had the win against Eltham in round 6 or round 7 when they got up by a point. But you just think that McLeod, with so much at stake, and just probably Whittlesea's form slump in the past 3 weeks, do you think McLeod would win that one?
Yeah, you'd think, especially they do play DeWitton Park very well, McLeod as well. If Whittlesea can't get back, like some of those players we mentioned earlier about injured, do you think it'd be a pretty comfortable one for McLeod? Even if they get those players back, they'll be a bit closer, but you think at home with McLeod, knowing that they pretty much have to win to have a chance at finals, they should be too strong.
It's a big day for the club as well. They've got their 1971 Premiership reunion. It's their only Premiership in the top flight, so it's a big day for them. And of course, 40 years since that day, so they're going to have all the players from that day down at the crowd. So a massive game. I guess it's interesting because they've been a real, not an overachievement, but definitely improved this year and given themselves every chance to make the finals. Probably fallen away the last month, perhaps. But now, with after that disappointing loss last week, to work so hard to get back into the game and still fall agonisingly short, it'll be interesting to see how they bounce back, and if they're able to remain positive after that. You just hope that they don't have a start like last week where they concede the first 9 goals. I don't think it happened this week, but you just don't know. I guess with if they are deflated mentally by what took place on Saturday.
Yeah, no matter how good a side you are at home, if you're giving up a 9-goal start, it's always going to be tough to get back whoever your opposition is. So they'll have to really. I think when we spoke to Brand a few weeks ago down at McLeod, they were worried about those starts. Obviously, they're still trying to improve those, and but you'd think that Whittlesea wouldn't have the same firepower that Monty had last week with Lindback kicking double figures.
I guess just quickly as before we out the show, I'd be remiss to not say well done to James Love from Greensboro, an under-19s kid who came in last week and kicked the match-winning goal. I think lived every kid's dream because he just come up. He's only played a couple of games in the seniors and showed some great composure. But that was one of the highlights of the game, but also just the high marking we saw as well. Josh Riddle put in a couple of contenders for Mark of the Year, and even Cameron Cloke in that last couple of minutes there where he kicked the goal to put his side, I think, back within a goal the difference when they were trailing by 10 points. But just another absolute hanger. So it had everything that game on the weekend, and I reckon the 2 games we've got coming up in Division 1 this weekend shouldn't let us down. But keep watching below as we preview all of the Division 2 and Division 3 games. Thank you for your time, and keep on watching. We'll see you soon.